snatched away from them. But at the same time, if you're Alex Rodriguez and you're getting paid this money and you're found to be guilty, you know, that's the position they're going to take, and people are going to have to deal with that. But I'm telling you, their position is we are going to fight this, and that's what that's all I can tell you.
Okay, that is no surprise.
All right.
They should want to fight this. We're about to be joined in our next segment by T.J. Quinn, one of the top reporters in this field, who has been reporting on SportsCenter
Exceptional.
that baseball has far more on Alex Rodriguez than it had on Ryan Braun, including perhaps some sort of interference with the investigation, as in witness tampering, as in obstruction of justice, that would be piled on top of the offenses alleged with biogenesis. So my point is, Stephen A., I think baseball will seek a lifetime ban on Alex Rodriguez. Will that stand up in the Court of Appeals in baseball? I doubt it. But again, do they have enough evidence to hang that all on Alex Rodriguez? I would think yes. So he will, and ESPNNewYork.com is now reporting that Alex is trying to plea out of his charges as we speak. Well, I'm sure he is, but I'm going to be fascinated to see just how hard baseball can come down on A-Rod now that the door has been opened by Ryan Braun. That's my point.
Why do you go as far as saying a
lifetime ban? Because I think they've wanted it for a long time, which is why they have been in concert with the New York Yankees. They have been trying to keep A-Rod off the field as long as possible so that they can get all their ducks in a row, get Ryan Braun out there, get this all released, which it just did. The next big domino to fall clearly is Alex Rodriguez.
Let me be clear. We both know, we all know what a big Yankee fan I am. Pinstripes, I mean, that's what it's all about. All right? No question about it. Let me be clear about the position that I'm taking. The New York Yankees. See, to me, I separate Major League Baseball and the New York Yankees. No matter what position they take with Alex Rodriguez, to me, Major League Baseball has made it clear they'll go after any and anybody to rid this sport of performance-enhancing drugs. That's been Commissioner Selig's battle cry. He's been going for it. I can't knock Major League Baseball for any position they're taking. I don't want to hear from the New York Yankees. I understand you signed Alex Rodriguez to that 10-year extension in 2007. I understand that it wasn't until February of 2009 that he acknowledged that he used performance-enhancing drugs for 2 years in Texas and all of this other stuff. I also remember Alex Rodriguez being embraced by the New York Yankees. Maybe it's a bit extreme to say with open arms, but the way he was balling at that particular time, they certainly didn't seem unhappy to have him in a New York Yankees uniform. They certainly didn't seem unhappy to have him in the New York Yankees uniform when he showed up in the postseason for the first time in his career in terms of how he performed. He was balling, okay? So the reality of the situation is if you stood up and support him then, even in the aftermath of signing him to a 10-year deal, even in the aftermath of him acknowledging at one point in time he had used PEDs, even though he alleges it was with the Texas Rangers and not with the New York Yankees. The reality of the situation is that you now find yourself in a position where you have made a bad deal. Now, you've got people out here, and I don't mean to engage in hyperbole or anything like that, but it is necessary to point this out. There are far more vicious crimes that have taken place in this world for people to save themselves far less money than $98 million. So if you're the New York Yankees and you have an opportunity to save $98 million or more, what extent are you willing to go to in order to do this? These are the kind of questions that have to be asked. And all I'm saying is, on the subject of PEDs, Alex Rodriguez, at some point in time, is going to have to answer that call. All of those cat calls calling for some level of acknowledgement as to what you did and did not do. And when that day comes, I intend to be there. But until that time, the notion that the New York Yankees have every right to be as much in an uproar as Major League Baseball is something I would challenge, because even before 2007, people were saying, why would you give a 10-year deal to anybody?
All right. Clearly, the Yankees are hoping to undo the monumental mistake they made.
That's right.
With this due process here, depending on what the penalty is for A-Rod. Maybe the realistic ban would be just for next season.
As opposed to
one season. Okay, what is he now, 38?
38.
Right? Okay, so he'd be 39. At some point, he's going to be so broken down, it appears, that he might opt to just say, I just can't do this anymore. Yeah, I'm gone, right?
That's entirely
or
possible.
so disgraced, he would say, I'm out.
It's entirely possible. But what I'm saying to you is there's no evidence that Major League Baseball worked in conjunction with the Milwaukee Brewers. There's no evidence that Major League Baseball worked in conjunction with any of the teams as it pertains to the players they were going after. I'm sure you consult with them, you talk with them, but you ultimately do what you have to do.
MLB is doing what it has to do.
For Major League Baseball.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is that if you go from 65 games, to take your analogy, if you go from 65 games for Ryan Braun to a lifetime ban for Alex Rodriguez, we all need to have a problem with that. That's an ocean apart. That's an ocean apart.
Okay.
And clearly, that can't be proven in this regard. You have no justification to go that far. Okay. If you wanted to give, I'm not advocating anything because I want to hear from Alex Rodriguez. I want to hear Major League Baseball's evidence. I want to hear all of this. But if you went from 65 to 100 games or something like that, nobody's going to sneeze at that. If you went from 65 games to an entire season, I don't think anybody would sneeze at that. You want to go a lifetime ban? That's a different ballgame.
You know who I want to hear
from?
That's
a different ballgame.
T.J. Quinn.
Let's layer this debate. If the evidence on A-Rod is, quote, far beyond what they had on Ryan Braun, what will happen to the Yankees third baseman? We will hear from T.J. Quinn, our investigative reporter, after the break. Stick around, everyone.
I think it's good. You know, it shows that, you know, the drug testing policy is working. Major League Baseball is doing everything we can to clean up the game.
You can never say it's a good day for baseball when something like this happens.
It's not good for anybody. It's not good for the players. It's not good for the fans.
It's never good when this happens. That's why it's so frustrating for the many of us and the majority of us that are doing it the right way.
If you're cheating and you're taking stuff you shouldn't be taking, you know, I think everyone in this room will say, you know, you should be caught, and, you know, we're glad to see it's justice and it's well served.
You know, we are moving in the right direction and cleaning up the game.
It does put a scar in this game.
Back to our top story. Former MVP Ryan Braun has been suspended for the rest of the 2013 season for violating the Joint Drug Prevention and Treatment Program. We welcome in our investigative reporter, T.J. Quinn. T.J., you reported that the evidence against A-Rod goes far beyond what they had on Ryan Braun. The question to you is, what more do investigators have?
I don't know the specifics. And what we were told was, yeah, it was far beyond. And we had reported earlier, Mike Fish and I have been working on this for almost a year, that back in February we reported that Braun, that A-Rod had a different relationship with Tony Bosch and other players. He was getting personal attention. We spoke to several people who said that Bosch used to go to A-Rod's house to inject him personally, that there was an incident where he was trying to get into a vein to either draw blood or inject something, kept missing the vein. A-Rod started screaming at him. He was bleeding all over the place, kicked him out of his house. Pretty graphic stuff. Baseball, we know, has reached out to numerous other witnesses. We don't know what exactly they've told them. We know that with Braun and with all these players, Bosch was supposed to provide copies of texts, emails, phone records, anything he had to corroborate what he said about his relationship with them. So with A-Rod, you've got the personal connection, you've got a longer relationship, and then you've got this other element that you guys were talking about, which was the possibility that he interfered with the investigation. So add all that together, he's a different category.
Then why is it that they grabbed Ryan Braun first instead of bringing the hammer down on Alex Rodriguez?
Because, well, a couple reasons. One, he cut a deal. And once he was willing to sit down with them, let me back up again. He met with them June 29th. He took the 5th throughout that conversation, but he knew from their questions what they had. They didn't lay it out and say, this is all we've got. This is what you would see in arbitration. But it was clear from the questions, wow, okay, they know about that, they know about that. So he wanted another meeting, wanted to sit down and come up with a suspension where he could complete it this year, not carry this into next season. Baseball was more than glad to do that and avoid arbitration. So they moved ahead with that to get him on the clock, start the suspension right away. With A-Rod, from what we understand, they sat down and prioritized what they were going to go through with Tony Bosch. A-Rod was last on that list, the reason being he's not playing. So there wasn't really quite the rush to get him off the field. He was already off it. And then all of a sudden you get to now it looks like he's back. So I don't know when the A-Rod stuff is going to come down. I know that they did want to do. They wanted to do all the suspensions at one time, so it didn't drag on forever. And with Braun, they just decided, okay, let's get this going.
So am I right to leap to the conclusion that MLB just needed somebody to confirm the guilt of Tony Bosch and Biogenesis by pleading out of their charges? And that was the first, I'm calling him a rat, who is Ryan Braun.
It's huge. I mean, it was huge. They knew going in that this is not a criminal case where you get, you're going to have 20 to 25 well, first off, yeah, we're looking 20 to 25 names. A lot of those are minor leaguers. They don't get arbitration. They take whatever baseball gives them. But the players who are major leaguers, who could appeal this, they weren't going to have individual cases in front of juries of their peers who are not sophisticated in the law, who can be impressed by a really good criminal attorney like, say, Rusty Hardin, someone who's very skilled. What they had was to make a case before an arbitrator who was very skilled in the law and was going to hear all of the cases. So if one person said Tony Bosch was credible, that goes a long way toward making him credible for everybody. If one minor leaguer had done that, that would have been great. Instead, it's Ryan Braun, the first guy out of the gate. That's huge. Now, you cannot make the logical leap that if he was correct about Braun, therefore he is correct about everybody else. But it sure doesn't hurt.
It doesn't
baseball,
hurt.
I don't think, could be much happier than they are right now.
Let me go back to Braun's statement yesterday. As I have acknowledged in the past, I am not perfect. I realize now that I have made some mistakes. I am willing to accept the consequences of those actions. Why, as a part of this agreement with Major League Baseball, why didn't Major League Baseball insist on him being candid about using performance-enhancing drugs? Because that's certainly not in his quote.
Because that's not what the policy is. If you accept the punishment, you accept it, and that's really it. They don't come out with the name of the drugs. They don't come out with the details. This is all stuff that's collectively bargained. A player cannot give away collectively bargained rights. Now, he can come out on his own and say, I did this, this, and this. And
I'm not even going that far, though, TJ. Yeah. I'm talking about the words, performance-enhancing drugs.
He didn't say it. He said, I made mistakes. Exactly. Right. What were the mistakes?
Yeah.
Well, we know from our reporting that his mistakes were